Corruption. At its core, corruption is the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. It manifests in many ways: bribery, embezzlement, nepotism, favoritism, and misuse of public resources. In a government setting, corruption not only drains a country's economy but also erodes public trust, undermines democracy, and stalls development. When those in leadership use state resources for personal enrichment, ordinary citizens suffer the consequences through poor infrastructure, unemployment, failing hospitals, and collapsing schools. Kenya's history cannot be told without looking at the era of President Daniel Arap Moi, who ruled from 1978 to 2002. Moi's regime is remembered for its strong grip on power, but also for the entrenchment of corruption in
na Afrika itakwisha. Tulikuwa na bili ya kuleta Kenya anti-corruption.
Late 1970s, Moi built a powerful patronage network. To maintain loyalty, he rewarded allies with lucrative government contracts, land allocations, and key positions in parastatals. State corporations like the Kenya Power and Lighting Company, the Kenya Posts and Telecommunications Corporation, and Kenya Railways became riddled with inefficiency because they were used to reward loyalists rather than serve the people. The economy suffered as state coffers were looted and public debt grew. One of the most notorious scandals of Moi's time was the Goldenberg scandal of the 1990s. At the heart of this scandal was a scheme where the Goldenberg International Company, owned by businessman Kamlesh Patni, received government compensation for supposedly exporting gold and diamonds. The catch? Kenya barely had any gold reserves worth exporting, yet through fraudulent paperwork and political connections, billions of shillings were paid out. Economists estimate that the Goldenberg scandal cost Kenya over 10% of its annual GDP, crippling the economy and fueling inflation. Investigations later implicated high-ranking government officials, including Vice President George Saitoti and close allies of Moi himself. Another scandal, less famous but equally damaging, was the Triton oil scandal and the Turkwell Gorge hydroelectric project, where inflated contracts and mismanagement drained state resources. These projects often had international donors involved, but the funds were diverted through shady deals, leaving Kenyans with debts and little development to show for it. Under Moi, corruption extended to and allocation. The Ndung and report released years later showed how powerful politicians and their cronies acquired vast tracts of public land illegally. Forest reserves, school lands, and even public utility spaces were allocated to individuals close to the regime. This contributed to environmental degradation and displacement of communities, some of which still struggle for justice today. Corruption also thrived in everyday life. Police roadblocks became toll stations where drivers were forced to part with bribes. Licensing offices demanded something small before issuing permits. Government services that were supposed to be free turned into money-making machines for bureaucrats. Ordinary Kenyans came to view corruption not as an exception but as the norm. Politically, Moi used corruption system of patronage ensured Moi's grip on power for decades, but it also destroyed institutions that should have served as checks and balances. The long-term impact of corruption under Moi was devastating.